When people say, what are you doing next?
Stop it. Don't ever ask me that again.
That sentence literally triggers my fight or flight, honest to God. I'm sorry, we're trying to make this. Can we do that again?
Is the Leaving Cert outdated? For me, I would say it definitely is. Because like even the current conversations between the two, like, you know, the Department of Education is saying that the Leaving Cert is outdated. We saw it with COVID, how people who were doing their Leaving Certs preferred the hybrid model as they felt that it was too challenging to learn all the what's required to learn in the space of 2 years. And then the exams, they're like forcing you to sit down, memorize everything that you learned instead of applying the knowledge that you have obtained from it, and just showing that you understand the context and like allowing yourself to express yourself as well, because that's what you do in college at the end of the day. Because it just, they say that Leaving Cert is supposed to prepare you for college, but it really doesn't.
No.
It does not prepare you for college, because you're supposed to memorize everything from 2 years, whereas in college is one semester and you move on.
I don't know. I think like the Leaving Cert is a bit of a scam, if you ask me. It's very much a money grabbing scheme. I'm sorry, but like it's not an even like race. So if you don't have money for grinds, you're already a little bit behind. Let's just say you struggle with a certain subject. Then you throw in the Gaeltacht, and if you can't afford to go to the Gaeltacht every summer, you're a little bit more behind in that sense. Yeah. And then there's, in my local town, there's a big emphasis on after school study, and it makes so much money. It's actually crazy. So if you can't already afford all these like extra things that you need in order to kind of move up, like it's already placing you a bit back, if that makes sense. And I just feel like it's a memory game. Like I feel like when I was studying for the Leaving Cert, it was very much like I can't remember a single thing because I was just photographing it all in my head. I was like photosynthesis, metamorphosis. I don't even know if any of this osmosis, like I don't even know what any of this means, like, but I was just learning it off because I wanted the points. Like it's all just about the points at the end of the day, which is like horrible, because I think that you should be able to just apply for the course. Like my course that I'm doing now in Maynooth, it was like, it's not even points based. You just needed to pass like English, Irish and maths, I think it was, but it was like based on an entrance exam and an interview, and then like a group interview, if that makes sense, on like why you wanted to do it, rather than right, we're just going to put the smartest person in here course, even though they might not even be competent enough to do it. So I don't know, I think we need like not the hybrid kind of scheme, but something different, you know, that kind of takes into account everyone's like different experiences and different pathways as well. I feel like there's just too much emphasis on leaving certain college. Like there's not enough on PLCs, especially apprenticeships. Like there's just such a stigma behind doing PLCs and stuff like that. So I just feel like there needs to be like a little update there now.
And to add to your point that it's almost feels like a scam, there's the bell curve.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there has to be a certain amount of C's.
That bloody bell curve, I tell you now, that bloody bell curve. And then like, do you know when the courses like go up in points, so it could be like 400 and you have to guess, you literally have to guess like, oh, I need like maybe 450 to ensure that I'm getting into this course. Like I think it's just too much. When people say, what are you doing next? What comes to mind?
Oh God. It's because like, in my situation is I chose the course that I'm doing just because it was almost like a compromise with myself and my family. Like my heart belongs to film at the end of the day. And it's kind of like when people come up to me, they're like, you're graduating this year. What's next? What's next for you? What are you doing? What are you doing? And it's like, I just want to study film. I just want to make movies at the end of the, at the end of my life. And it's just so mentally draining when they keep on asking you and you're like, you hear it like 3 times a day and then the next day, and then they're asking you like, how's your dissertation going, how are your projects going, how are you, like, and then you're just like, stop it, don't ever ask me that again.
That sentence literally triggers my fight or flight, honest to God. If anything, it really does. I don't know how to explain it. I think like I'm in final year now, and so the questions that are like, not so much the like department is asking us those questions. I think it's more kind of pressure within yourself that you feel you have to be doing something next. I'm such a planner, so I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow, but best believe I have my plan for the next 20 years. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how I'm supposed to do all this, but I do know where I would like it to be. And then when it doesn't go there, it's really stressful, if that makes sense. So you obviously feel like once you graduate, you need to rather be straight into a job, or you need to have a master's, whilst like what you're doing now is perfectly okay. Do you know, like we're only 20. I feel like once you get to final year and you're like 20, 21, you almost feel like you're being pushed out into the big world, and that you're like in your 40s, not saying 40s is bad, but like, and you need to have it all figured out. You need to have a mortgage, kids, all of this stuff. When I think we're in a really good position in the sense, like we have a housing crisis, so we can't even afford to get a mortgage at the minute. So I think just, it's actually such a stressful question. What are you doing next?
And it's like, what do you want? Like, you always have to like apply yourself to the person you're talking to. So if your parents are asking you, you have to answer it in a certain way. If your friends are asking you, you have to certain
you kind of have to, like if you're talking to your friends, you have to be a bit more, not nonchalant about it essentially, but you don't want to make other people anxious as well if they haven't started applying for masters, or they haven't started like looking up grad programs or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. When I say to my mom, I'm like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, you're not living at my house again. But I will be. Best believe I'll be living at her house for a good couple of years. But yeah.
Do you think students take care of their mental health well?
I don't want to generalize, but I don't think so. I think it depends on the student, and I think it depends on where you are in life, if that makes sense. Like first year of college, I didn't look after my mental health at all. And so I kind of not coped with going out and stuff like that, but I think you're almost in this craze of like, oh my gosh, it's my first time out. I don't have to go home. Like my mom's not ringing me, so I can do whatever I want. And so you kind of go into this like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to balance everything all at once. And you feel like the college kind of, not mantra is that, you know, you're just going to struggle. Like you're the broke college student. Like it's just going to be stressful. But I think there comes to a point where like stress, if it's making you cry or it's making you anxious or it's really, really like affecting your well-being, then it's a whole different discussion. But I think it's just so hard to access mental health services in Ireland as it is, do you know, that kind of way. And then like third level students are sometimes put on the back burner in regards to like, I don't know, extra supports and services. So, do you know, I don't know, I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard as a student to take care of your mental health, especially if you're doing lectures, and it's a very demanding like role as a student in college, especially like depending on the course you're doing. So I don't know, like it's so hard to kind of like prioritize your mental health. It's so important, but I don't know, I don't think it's talked about enough, if you ask me. What do you think?
Definitely, because even like I used to be like all like ready for first year and everything like that, and then as the years came by, COVID especially as well, and you're just kind of like, I just don't want to bother going into class anymore. You know, I'd rather just sit at home, chill out, do my assignments that I'm completely backlogged in. And it's kind of like, I don't think a lot of the colleges in Ireland, they don't really properly promote what mental health services they have available. Because like I work with Jigsaw as well, and it's kind of like people just don't know mental health services exist because it's just not made available. And it's just, you know, there's always it's okay to not be okay.
It's okay to not be okay.
And I completely agree with that, but it's like, okay, but what do I do if I'm not feeling okay?
Like, are we creating those conditions to, you know, when you're not feeling okay, like we obviously know that's okay, but what do we do from there, if that makes sense?
What I think is a very important thing that I notice is like, in your first few years, you're kind of thinking you're by yourself. You feel like no one is going through what you're going, and then you come into your final years, you're like,
everyone's about like, I think one assignment off from like their breaking point, if that makes sense. But nobody wants to seem like they're at breaking point. Everyone wants to seem like they have it all together.
One person brings it up, it's like, I'm so behind that. And then like, oh my God, you don't know how much of a relief that
you know?
is.
So I don't know, I think it depends. Then when you throw in like the likes of therapy and stuff like that, when you throw in that like extra dimension of if you're from the traveling community or you're a person of color or whatever, like your experiences of mental health services or public services are going to be completely different than, I don't know, a settled middle class white student, if that makes sense. Like you're not, the therapy or the counselling that's available in university personally would not work for the likes of me. You'd have to find that elsewhere. And then it's like, you have to fund that yourself, and it's like, which money? Because I'm in college like 5 days a week, so I'm trying to, you know, the math ain't mathin'. So,
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense, honestly. How do you feel going to college during a pandemic?
Ooh, that's for me. Like, I'll be completely honest and say I was living in a family, like in my family home, and myself and my family, we disagree on a lot of things.
Yeah.
So just like being stuck with the 2 kilometer radius, the 5 kilometer radius, not being able to go for those long walks that keep me sane was really mentally draining.
Yeah.
And just, we had this like lovely, like my course is very small. There's about 11 of us now.
Yeah.
And we used to be like a tight-knit bubble of people. And like, you know, you would like see each other outside of college, chill out and everything like that. And then that's lost because they were only seeing blank screens for a whole year, watching YouTube videos for €3,000 for the year, right? €3,000 for the year, just watching YouTube videos, breaking the fourth wall.
Anyway.
And then like we get back to face and it just feels
weird. It's like so, it's like you don't know them, if that makes sense. Like my course
completely different people now.
is, I think there's about 30 of us and we all sit in a circle, which is so weird, but it's all about that whole collaborative open space, blah, blah, blah. And we even found that during COVID, when we were online, we started college in 2019, so we were on campus for a good bit. And COVID hit like when we were on our first placement, so it worked out a bit well, but I think it was kind of like the dynamics kind of shifted in the sense that like you weren't seeing people every day, you didn't actually know what was going on in anyone's lives because you only saw each other on Teams during classes, if that makes sense. And similar to you, I was also living with my family for the first half of the lockdown. And I love my family, but Janie Mac, like, they'd actually drive you up the wall. Like, I have 2 sisters that are 15 and a brother at the time who was, I want to say 9. And my mom she's originally from Nigeria and moved here, I want to say 23 years ago. And so there's a lot of things that she can't help my sisters and brothers do in regards to homework or whatever. And so I'd have to be that kind of person that had to like help my sisters with their junior cert because they recently did it. And then I'd help my brother with his homework, and he's really like, I'm not doing it. Like he's very like, I don't like school. So I give it up to primary school teachers because I just don't have the patience for that. And then in the same sense, my mom isn't tech savvy. So I have a laptop simply to do my college work, but that's the only laptop in the house. And if the 3 of us all have an online call at the same time, it's actually madness. And you have to tell everyone to be quiet and it's just, you know, it's a lot. And I was living in a student house straight after. And I don't know, I think just the way it affects your mental health, people don't really talk about that enough. You know, like I shared a room in a student house with my best friend in college, and just the way that the pandemic affected her was just crazy in the sense that like you had to work full time if you needed the money to pay your rent, and then you were also being a student at the same time. You weren't seeing your family or friends. It's just so isolating, if that makes sense. So I don't know, I guess to wrap up the question, how do you feel about going to college during a pandemic?
Weird.
Extremely weird, especially now that like COVID is kind of over. It's still kind of weird, if that makes sense. Like it's, how do you describe
like
it?
The first day, like when you see less people with masks, you know, when the mask mandate lifts, you're like,
who are you? Yeah, it's like, sugar, I forgot my mask. And then you're like, oh, I actually don't need it today, but I'll wear it for safety.
Yeah. Was it easy finding accommodation?
Right, I'll go first. In first year, I had the opportunity to live on campus, but the stress of getting that accommodation was so stressful. Like I never knew how bad student accommodation, like the housing crisis was in Ireland until I started college. The accommodation for on campus, I think, closes in May or whatever, and I hadn't known if I was actually going to that university, so I was like, right, I can't even afford on campus for a minute. So I was like, right, it's grand. And then come August, like set my place and there's no like accommodation left. It's so hard to find it, especially if you're a new student with no references and you've just lived with your mom for your whole entire life. It's like your mom can't be your reference, like, you know, if she's still doing your washing. So, you know, so I remember I got on campus, but like the stress behind it, I remember I'd be crying. I'd be like, Mom, I'm going to be living underneath the River Liffey because I can't find a house. And she's like, you can always commute. But I think people don't realize that, like, although commuting is a great option, it kind of isolates you from the whole student experience, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it's really hard to find actual affordable student accommodation. There's obviously student accommodation everywhere, but whether or not it's affordable and taken into account like students' like books, fuel, all these different aspects. Like if you're putting your rent at 800 a month and the average person is probably getting less than the 650 for Susie. Where is the money supposed to be coming from? Because if we're working on the weekends to pay the rent, like, do you know, it's just, you know, that kind of critical thinking stuff around it. So I don't know. And then sometimes you can end up living with people that you don't like simply for the sake that you don't want to live at home and you need to be close to college, you know. So, it's so stressful. I don't even want to think about it. I'm just going to live with my mum. Maybe ask her to get a shed or something. I might just live in her shed. What do you think?
For me, I had a personal situation that arose that I had just couldn't stay at my family home anymore. So I couch surfed for like 2.5 months. Well, it wasn't really couch surfing. I was sleeping in beds and like kind of that. Like it was in the same place all the time. It was with 3 of my mates. And like, and I think that's where I finally started feeling freedom for the first time. But then like actually searching for my own place, because obviously you feel guilty for crashing at your friends' all the time. Like it took a while. Like it was just like on Daft, on the student rent.ie, the student website. You're like you know, emailing every single
landlord,
ad that you can find, and some of them don't ever get back to you. They call you back saying we have no places, and you're like, what am I going to do? And luckily, I eventually did find a place, and it's a great enough spot. Like there's a lot of problems with the place. But
you see, that's the thing. Do you know, you're paying all this money. Like my friend is living in a student house and she's paying like, I think it's around 600 a month for that small box room. And the toilet doesn't be flushing. Like there's there's mold in the shower, but it's like, you'll just take whatever, because if you live like 4 hours away from your university, you're not going to commute. Like I used to help, like I commute this year for final year because I don't mind it. It's only an hour. But I noticed that some of my friends who had like lectures earlier in the morning, if they needed to get to Maynooth or whatever, they'd have to leave their houses at least 4 o'clock. And if you have a break between those classes, you're literally just waiting around. You don't have a place to go. You don't go home or whatever, especially in the height of COVID when certain things weren't open and it was all kind of outdoorish kind of things. Like, I think it's a scam. I think they need to lower their prices and they need to make like proper accommodation, like without the mold. Definitely. And a toilet that flushes. So that is it. We were great. I think we were great. I think we should do a TED Talk or something. Personally, I think we should have done a TED Talk.